Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of talking about the Bible. Today we're going to be, as we were talking about in the last video, we were talking about how Israel went into exile when, if you watched the last video, how Egypt came up against Judah, and then after that Babylon comes in, and basically they're a satellite nation of Babylon. And basically we're going to be talking about how God brought the people of Israel back to Jerusalem to, reestablish their faith, reestablish the city and their country. Because, the theme of these videos, we keep talking about how if you don't have faith in God, then, all the blessings that come with it are taken away. And so we talked about how Israel turned away from God and the consequences. So Israel is in Babylon and they're in exile, and so around this time, the king of Babylon at that time, and remember, hold on, let's go back a little bit. The Israelites were in exile for 7 decades, so that's 70 years of exile, and in the latter of those 70 years, the new king of Babylon, Nabonidus, I believe his name is. I might have that wrong. You can go and look that up. But basically, in his country, he wasn't doing so well. The people didn't really like him. You think about when a president these days doesn't do very well, people are not very approving of it. Basically, that's where he was, and the people were turning against him. The religious leaders in the country were turning against him, and it was not going so well. So at this time, though, there's an empire called Persia, and the Persian Empire was coming in. They were taking over all kinds of countries. I think I can't really give you that many examples, but one of them I think is a country called Mede or something. But there's all kinds of countries they were just sweeping up, and it kind of became an empire all of a sudden. So basically, God stirred up in Cyrus, the king of Persia's heart, to basically go into Babylon, because as you can tell, Nabonidus, people aren't very happy with him. King of Persia's looking at this and thinking, okay, well maybe I can get in here too, because they're having infighting. And so that's basically what he does, and God stirs up in his heart, and to do it because it's meant to bring the people of Israel back to their home country, because they're in exile in Babylon. So King Cyrus of Persia comes into Babylon, and he takes over the country, and Babylon becomes a part of the Persian Empire. And King Cyrus is very, he's very tolerant to people of other faiths, other traditions, other values, different clothing, whatever. He's very tolerant to people of different traditions rather than the traditions of his own people. So instead of, trying to impose everything on everybody, he takes over the country and he keeps people's traditions. And what he saw is, the Jews were in Babylon in exile, and he said, well, you know what? Why don't we bring you back to your home country? Obviously, this was God's doing, and he put it in his heart to do it, but he basically said, all right, let's bring the Jews back to Israel, to their home country, and basically he signed a declaration saying that the Lord is the God of Jerusalem, and that the people should worship him and rebuild the house of the Lord. As you know, the house of the Lord has been destroyed at that time when Babylon came up to besiege Jerusalem. So basically, they sign the edict. He hands them a bunch of gold and silver, whatever money they need to help build the house, and the Jews come back to Israel, their home, and they restore the priesthood. They begin rebuilding the house of the Lord, and they continue in their faith in God. And so, the rebuilding process begins of the country. So along the way, though, as they're rebuilding the house of the Lord, there's some adversaries that they had during, when they were in exile in Babylon, because you know how it is, different ethnicities, but they had some adversaries while they're in exile. So basically they come up and they tell the Israelites, hey, we seek God too, we want to help build the house of the Lord. And the Israelites tell them, no, this is our project, you have nothing to do with this, go away. And the adversaries, they're in Babylon, they kind of have some power, even though the Persians take over, but, excuse me, but they basically, at that point, they hindered their ability to continue rebuilding the house of the Lord. I mean, they were doing it, but they were hindering stuff coming in, they were hindering, the work, and they're just being trolls and blocking things, And the house of the Lord wasn't completed until Darius, the king of Persia, became into reign, and he was looking over the edicts of Cyrus and saw how there was one where they were talking about rebuilding the house of the Lord, and so obviously it hadn't been done yet. So he basically enforces it, and the house of the Lord is finished, and all the blocking and all that stuff in the bureaucracy in the way was pushed aside. So the house of the Lord was completed, people restored the priesthood, they did the sacrifices and all that stuff. But the important thing is, even though they had lost everything from what they did have, and that's what we were talking about in the last video, how Israel went into exile, because every time Israel lost faith in God or turned away or didn't listen, it would always end up that they get punished somehow. Maybe they lose a part of the country, maybe the whole country collapses, maybe they split in two, whatever. Things happen that aren't good. And so that's basically the lesson here. So have faith in God. Don't turn away from God and just leave yourself out, is what I'm saying. Because, I'm giving a summary, but just read the Bible, you know what I'm saying? Just read. I mean, the best way to understand is just to read. So, basically, the people of Israel back, they're redeemed, and that's another thing, it's called redemption. The people of Israel, they weren't listening, they weren't doing the right thing, they weren't really following God, and then when they had everything taken away, then they turned back, because they're like, we have nothing left, we got nothing left, and they turn back to God, and they get everything back. That's how it happens. So if you're ever, lose faith in God, and you realize, well, wait, I just lost everything. Not talking in a material sense, but you can always turn back to God. God's always listening. God is always calling. God never abandons anyone, even though you might abandon Him. God's not going to abandon you. As long as you're still on this earth, you still have time to turn back. But anyway, I want to thank you for watching this video. Please read the Bible. You don't have to read every day, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, whatever works for you, but just read. That's the best way to understand, is to read the Bible. Anyway, God bless you. Believe in God and have faith, and thank you for watching this video, and goodbye.